Am I the a-hole for not being willing to split my daughter's education fund with my stepson? My daughter, 15 female, has a 529 that my ex-husband and I set up and have been paying into. She has about $73K in there for her college. My ex-husband and I broke up amicably, so we still have been contributing jointly. My current husband and I started dating 6 years ago and got married 3 years ago. His son, 18 male, is attending college this fall and is paying out of pocket. His ex-wife and him apparently didn't save anything for his son, and so he has to take out loans. He brought up the idea of splitting my daughter's college fund with his son because she is a few years from needing it, so he thought I could take out half of what I put in to give to him. I told him I've been paying for my daughter way longer than we've been together, and she knows there's money set aside for her schooling and no one is entitled to it but her. He laughed it off and accused me of being too serious. Last night, though, he brought it up again and got more demanding, saying his son is going to be stuck with a ton of debt, and says I've known him since he was 12, so I have an obligation to help. I told him he has to help his son, but I never agreed to help his son pay for college, especially not through my daughter's fund. He got angry and accused me of not loving his son, otherwise I would be sharing the college fund, and drove off. He came back after a few hours and apologized, and then this afternoon after work brought up me helping his son with college again, which I shot down and he got angry at me for again. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. His son isn't entitled to the fund that you and your ex-husband is funding. Your ex-husband isn't doing that for him. He's doing it for his daughter. He could ask you to currently help his son out, but even then, if you say no, it's not fair for him to get mad. I think Opie's ex would be hugely angry. Erupting like Vesuvius, if the money he contributed to their daughter's college fund was diverted to some rando kid he's not related to. Opie should tell hubby that he needs to go talk to her ex to give up half of that money and to let her know how that works out. Oh no, I would not tell husband to talk to the ex and giving up half of the money. That is tantamount to Opie saying she's amenable to it. Not a good idea. I think the point would be to underscore for Opie's husband that she can't take money from her daughter to give to her stepson. That what Opie's husband is asking for isn't just immoral, but illegal. Not the a-hole. Why in the world didn't he bring this up 3 years ago when you and he got married? And has he been contributing to your daughter's college fund? Did he ever even offer? If not, then he clearly intended to leave the funding for education to you and her father, and should have expected to pay for his own kid's education with the help of his son's mother. Because he didn't know about it until 2 years ago. Okay, so 2 years ago, has he been giving money to your daughter's college fund? Haha, nope. Next story. Am I the a-hole for taking my wife's side after she screamed and cursed at my mother? This just happened and my wife is currently sleeping while my mom is blowing up my phone. I, 33 male, am married to my wonderful wife, Melody, 29 female, and she is currently pregnant with our first child together. I have a 6-year-old daughter, Tina, whose mother and I split 50-50 custody with, so I know for the most part what Melody needs in order to feel supported while she carries our child. I have been spending lots of time making sure she's comfortable and taking on more of the load at home so she's not doing too much. This is her first child after all, and it's obviously a lot for her physically and emotionally. My mother and Melody don't get along too well. Mom didn't like my ex either. We broke up because we were headed on different paths, not because of my mother. And there's no bad blood, so I think she just doesn't like her because she's dating me for whatever reason. It's weird. She's very nitpicky about Melody, how much she does around the house, how emotional she is. Melody already cries very easily, and being pregnant has made her even more sensitive, which is fine. And the fact that she wants to be a stay-at-home mom. It just seems like nothing Melody does is okay. I do, however, stand up for her and do not just allow my mom to talk down to her. Today, before picking up my daughter from summer camp, Melody went to 3 different grocery stores to find rotisserie chicken. She's been talking about it since last night and really wanted one. Lol. She sent me picture messages documenting her quest for the chicken and finally found it. My girl was happy. Rotisserie chicken is also kind of a comfort food for her like spaghetti, because her mom used to make one of those when she was having a lazy day and didn't feel like cooking. She was planning on serving that with some other basic sides for dinner. Perfectly fine by me. My mother came by to see Tina and started telling Melody the chicken is bad for her and she should not be eating that pregnant. Melody said it's fine. She usually eats healthy and just wants this one thing she's craving. My mom went on about how unhealthy it was and said she needs to eat something else. Melody said no and went to the backyard to FaceTime her family out of state. When she came back, my mom had thrown out the food and ordered takeout, a salad for Melody and pizza for everyone else. Melody asked where the chicken was, and my mother told her she needs to start being a responsible mother and eat correctly for the baby. Melody screamed, "What the heck is wrong with you? Why are you always such a witch to me?" She then started crying and called me home. I came back and asked my mother to leave after hearing her story and said she's not to come back until she apologizes for how she treated Melody. My mom went on about how I'm choosing another woman over her, but I just think enough is enough, and Melody reached her limit. She apologized to me for blowing up when Tina was in the house, but I told her it's okay. Stuff happened. Tina's okay. And I went to find her another chicken before the store closed. My dad thinks I'm right for taking Melody's side, but my brother thinks I should always defend mom. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Glad you went on a hunt for a chicken to replace the one your mother trashed. Great husbanding on your rando P. What the heck is wrong with your mom though? I couldn't let her 3-store quest be for nothing. She was dying for that chicken. I have no clue what's up with my mom. I want her to be able to be in my children's lives, but we need some serious boundary work. I don't know what to do, dude. It sucks, but consequences. The faster you enact consequences and make her understand you're serious, the sooner she will probably realize you're serious and start respecting you as an adult. I see so many posts from people who pussyfoots around actually enacting boundaries and consequences, and they ruin their marriages because a person can only take so much. The sooner you show you're a grown man and always support your wife, the sooner your mother will understand her role. Hopefully anyways. Not the a-hole, but your mom sure is. As a former pregnant woman, if my mother-in-law would have thrown away food I was craving and ordered me a salad instead, I would have thrown her on a rotisserie and spun her around until she apologized. I just showed this comment to Melody and she couldn't stop laughing. Thank you for making her night, haha. Not the a-hole. As far as I know, there's nothing dangerous about eating cooked chicken during pregnancy. She claims all the seasoning and grease from the way rotisserie chicken is made isn't healthy. I don't know how true that is, but Melody's so healthy, and was even before the baby. She works out consistently and eats really well, unless she wants a treat, which I think is healthy. I wouldn't want her overdoing healthy eating or exercise anyway, pregnant or not. Next story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for taking in my niece despite my husband's complaints even though we are child-free?" 25 female and 27 male. Niece is 3 years old. My sister asked me if we would take her daughter since she had to go out of town for a surgical procedure and wouldn't be able to care for her daughter while she recovers. I ran this by my husband, who immediately said no and shook his head. I said it was my niece, and that just because we weren't really fans of having kids ourselves doesn't mean we can't do a favor for family. It ended in an argument, but I ended up taking her anyways. He refuses to do anything with her. This isn't the first time they've met. He just never really interacted with her, which I don't expect him to. But when I brought up that he could have a better attitude about this, he just said that I shouldn't have brought a kid into our home. He also went on a rant that because of this, I'm probably going to change my mind about having kids, and he won't put up with that. Said like that he will divorce me if I even suggest it. My niece hasn't even been much of a problem. In fact, she's usually quiet unless she's hungry or tired. Yes, she gets into stuff and makes messes, but I assume that's pretty standard toddler behavior. I don't understand why he's so angry, since it's not like he's having to do anything. Edit, I should add that she'll only be here for about a week and a half, maybe longer if my sister has complications, but we don't know yet. Also, I told him he should have a better attitude towards her because I read that kids can tell when you don't like them, and being away from her mom is already hard enough for her. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. People are saying you're the a-hole because he said no and that should be a mutual decision. And I would normally agree, but I'd be pretty upset for my partner telling me that I can't help out my sister in a tough situation like that. It is not like it's permanent. For no real reason apart from him not liking kids. This isn't a social visit. It's a family emergency. Maybe not urgent, but still vulnerable. And then the comments about divorcing at the mention of wanting kids? That's a big leap. Shows where his head is at. Spoiler, not focused on sister's surgery and well-being of a niece. And just a pretty a-hole thing to say in general. This is at least, and everyone sucks here, but personally, I'd say not the a-hole. Exactly, all of this. I am child-free myself, but when my best friend donated a kidney to his wife, I was ready to be with our kid for 2 months if need be while they recover. Thankfully, I didn't need to watch the kid for 2 months because his father-in-law flew out to the US to be with them. But I was ready to do so if needed, no matter how I feel about having children. That's what you do for family, chosen or not. It's his family too, and he should have never said no. He should care enough to sacrifice his freedom for a couple weeks. The sister wouldn't have asked if she had better options, I assume. Not the whole. Reddit just loves these adamantly child-free types and act like the existence of any child in the immediate vicinity is some kind of personal affront to their autonomy and personhood. OP, for Pete's sake, it's 10 days at the most. He can get over himself. God forbid this isn't just the first warning sign of a long life with this guy, growing gradually more hateful about children over time. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. I'm surprised some people are voting you the a-hole here. Opie did a favor for her sister, who is having a complicated surgery. I'm sure the sister tried finding other means of childcare. This is what family does for one another. Doesn't mean she is entitled to it, but Opie has the empathy to do so, which Opie's husband is seriously lacking. Some people think that if someone declares themselves child-free, they must not be asked to touch or be in the presence of any children ever again. And because they are child-free, they should never be asked to even watch a child for 5 minutes, or else they'll be cursed with being a parent or something. It is weird. Opie's not a-hole. At first, the headline made me assume like she's taking the niece in permanently. But a week? That's just doing your sister and niece a huge favor, and something people with good relationships do. It isn't like she dropped her off on your doorsteps. I'd rather take care of a 3-year-old than a newborn or a baby. I saw one on here once that was like, am I the a-hole for not watching my sister's kid while she took a shower since I'm child-free? Like, yeah, you're the a-hole. Lol, some of these people act like being in the mere presence of a child somehow makes them no longer child-free. Now, for the last story, am I the a-hole for telling my mother it's my house, not hers? So, I just bought my first house. It's a small log cabin-style house made out of old cypress logs and oak. It's my dream house, and I absolutely love it. I started moving my stuff in, and once I finished, my mom and dad came over to help me unpack everything and decorate. Now, I always loved going to state parks and going into the small natural museums they have. I wanted my home to pay homage to my natural area, which is mainly bayous and rivers. So, I have driftwoods and pelts from different native animals as well as mounted native fish, and it looks like a museum inside. I have arrowheads and other things I've found from old native tribes in our area, and I love the feel and vibe of the home. I also like to make wine, and so a good portion of my house is also dedicated to wine and other spirits. My mother, however, doesn't like that my house is basically all brown on the inside with very little color. She is an artist, and so doesn't like how it's so bland. While they were helping me set everything up, she kept moving things around that I would set up and says it looks better this way. But to me it didn't. After the first few times I was getting annoyed because she kept doing it, even though I'd say I liked it the way it was. Finally came for my centerpiece of my house to go in, and she refused to help me put it up because to her it didn't look right. I finally snapped and said, "Mom, this is my house, not yours. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. What matters is that I like it as it's my house, not yours." When I said that, she started crying and left my house with my dad. She called me saying that she was only trying to help and give me a woman's perspective, and she didn't feel a woman would be comfortable there. She said I was acting like an a-hole while she was only trying to help. I said I appreciate her efforts, but I want my house to be comfortable for me, not to accommodate others. At that, she hung up and said she wouldn't help me with my house until I see reason. It's been a few days since we spoke, and I'm wondering if maybe she is right and I was an a-hole when she was just trying to help. So, am I the a-hole here? Not the a-hole. It's your house, not hers. You have to be comfortable there. She wanted it to be an extension of her, like she sees you. Enjoy your home and live your life. Oh hell no, not the a-hole. Your mom is amusingly controlling here. If and when you have a serious relationship, that woman can negotiate decoration style with you. Until then, it's a bachelor pad. Congrats, Opie. That's what I was thinking as well. I really do appreciate her helping and giving me advice, but I don't know why she kept saying that women won't feel comfortable there. Like, it's not like I have dead animals and taxidermy everywhere in my house. It's just a few pelts and mounted fish that I bought. I didn't kill or tan those hides. Plus, after I completely moved in, I walked inside for the first time with the house being full and I felt like I was in a museum. And I smiled to myself because that's exactly what I wanted. It's just a museum that I don't have to travel to see or pay a fee to tour. It's my actual house. But back to my mother, this is the longest she has gone without talking to me. And my dad said she is still sore about me snapping at her. My dad said he loves my house and that my great-grandfather would have loved it too. We were both really close to him. To me, that reinforced what I believe, as that made me feel good just to have support, you know? Edit/update. I'm very surprised by how many of the comments are from women saying they would love the house. One nice lady even said it gives me +3 attractiveness, which is the best compliment I've gotten in a while, so thanks for that, ma'am. I called my mother and stood my ground but did apologize for the tone. She said that with me buying a house and moving all within a 3-week period was just a lot, and that she just wanted to be a part of my house. I guess what she meant was that she's sad to see me go and wanted a small piece of my house for her. Even though I didn't like hearing that, but I guess I kinda understand. My dad just said, "Son, at least you don't have to live with her anymore," which did make me laugh, and a little sad for the old man, but that is his ball of wax to deal with now. I told them both I loved them and thanked them for helping me move in and get comfy. I appreciate everyone who has commented. I'll leave the post open but most likely won't be responding as I've gotten my answer from Reddit, and I have remedied the situation like an adult. Y'all have a lovely day/night wherever you might reside, and again, thank you all so very much. Am I the a-hole for not forgiving my wife for kissing another guy even though she was suffering from PPD? My wife gave birth about 1 year ago and she changed. She was angry all the time, suspicious and paranoid of everyone. I think her mother filled her head against me. She would constantly accuse me of cheating, and mother-in-law and her would talk bad about me on the phone when I was not home. One day, she said she's leaving me and her mother was packing her stuff. She left with our daughter to her mother's house. Later that night, she called me and told me that she kissed a guy and asked me how it feels to be cheated on, accusing me again of being a cheater and how I betrayed her. I finally had enough and told her to not come back. Then she started blowing up my phone, and I refused to reply back or take up her calls. She did show up in our house after 2 days and asked me for help with her mental state. I took her to the hospital and she was diagnosed with PPD and was put on medication. She started slowly returning back to her normal self. I think she has healed and can manage by herself from now on, so it was the right time for me to divorce her. So I served her divorce papers a few days ago. She's not happy about it and begging me to not divorce her. She's blaming it on PPD. I understand that her head was messed up, but I don't tolerate cheating. If she had stabbed me or something, I would have forgiven her, but I just don't tolerate cheating. So I am proceeding with divorce. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Her mom did not do her any favors. Tell her to talk to her mom about this. Yes, mother-in-law was living the stereotype. It infuriates me to think of a mother messing up a daughter's marriage and mental health like this. I've experienced this firsthand. It literally took 10 freaking years to repair all the damage. The symptoms you are describing, paranoia and delusions, do not fit with postpartum depression. They sound more like postpartum psychosis. This is very different and very serious. It can cause paranoia, delusions, and hallucinations. Are you sure your interpretation of the diagnosis is correct? Years ago, when I worked in mental health, I worked with a social worker who had to have a client section because she had visited, and the client was oiling up the baby on a baking tray and about to put it in the oven because she thought it was a chicken. Postpartum psychosis. Well, mom certainly is toxic. I'm reminded of the Reddit story about a guy whose PPD wife was good friends with her neighbor. Neighbor poisoned the water there as well, told the PPD wife that the husband was a cheater. Coming home late, cheater. On the phone, cheater, etc., etc. Husband was not cheating. He was working more hours to save money and did everything he could to help PPD wife. Tried to get her meds. PPD wife became inconsolable over the cheating and left him and the baby. She eventually took her own life because of the lies of a toxic neighbor. The toxic neighbor had the absolute gall to ask him if she could speak at a funeral. It was so sad. No, it was tragic. Just saying that your wife may be, or had been, in an easily manipulative state. Her mother is feeding her garbage about you, and perhaps that should be taken into account before pulling a trigger like divorce. Sounds to me like she kissed the guy to punish you, not to sleep with him. It's immature, but I don't consider it cheating. I've been cheated on, so normally I jump on a cheat wagon fast. But just be hesitant to divorce someone who isn't in the right mind, who someone they trusted implicitly was feeding them lies while they were in a depressive state, and did something that she would absolutely not have done if those things weren't in play. I mean, did you ever have any concerns about cheating before all this happened? If you value the marriage and family, it might be worth getting your wife the help she needs with her depression, go to counseling together, and then decide whether or not the marriage will work. Next story. Am I the a-hole for kicking my boyfriend and his kid out because his son was constantly scaring my baby on purpose? I was diagnosed with PPD, so I'm not sure if this is playing a part in my actions or not. I've been with my boyfriend for 6 years, and he has a 12-year-old son, Jake. I've owned my home for nearly 10 years now. They moved in 2 years ago. Our daughter is 3 months old. Now, Jake loves his sister. He's always holding her and trying to help. But there's been a massive issue since I had her with him purposely scaring her, walking up to her and yelling "Rah!" He thinks it's hilarious when she does startle reflexes, and then laughs when she cries, saying, "Aw, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare her like that," but continues laughing and continues purposely trying to scare her. At least 4 times a day. Now, I have always told him to cut the crap. I've told him several times that he is hurting her ears. I've told him several times that it's not funny. And then not even 3 days ago, I lost it entirely and told my boyfriend and him that if he purposely scared my kid again, then they would be evicted and gone from my constant life. I said this because while my boyfriend does correct his kids sometimes, he also tells me I'm overreacting. He said that it's natural for kids to think it's funny when babies get startled, and I simply don't understand because I've never been around multiple kids. His son has a half-brother and apparently did the same with him when he was a baby. But anyways, I lost it and threatened to kick them out. And in that moment, I truly felt like an a-hole because Jake looked sad and just went to his room. But like, last night he stepped out of the room for a minute and my daughter was in her swing. Jake went to sit here, and when I was out of the room, I heard Jake, very loudly and fast, say, "What are you doing?" in a baby voice, and my daughter starts screaming immediately following. I heard my boyfriend take care of it. And then like an hour later, I went to the bathroom and the baby was in her seat. Then I heard "Rah!" followed by the baby crying, yet again. So I told them to pack their stuff and get out now. I didn't wait for a response, because now I'm trying to calm down my baby. Jake tried apologizing and said it was a habit, and my boyfriend started protesting, saying it's not a big deal, and I just refused to acknowledge their excuses, and told them to leave. My boyfriend sat down on a chair, said he wasn't going anywhere, and that this is his house too. So I said I would leave then, and have a cop serve him an eviction notice. He tried begging me to calm down and kept saying, "He's freaking 12. What do you expect? He's not going to be perfect." I left and this morning I filed for their eviction. Everyone thinks I'm being ridiculous here, but Jake refuses to stop and I'm tired of him purposely yelling in my daughter's face to scare her 4+ times a day. Edited to add, I also have asked Jake why he does this, and he has said he thinks it's funny when kids cry. Not the a-hole. Yes, he's 12. Old enough to know better and to not do it. Old enough to listen to instructions. Would he like it if you startled him every morning? No. He's 12 but he's being an a-hole, and it sounds almost sadistic. Yeah, it will escalate when the baby is no longer scared by it. I hope he needs to protect herself and the baby at her home. I hope she sees this in case she starts backpedaling. That's exactly what I was thinking. If he thinks it's funny when babies cry, when she no longer jumps at scares, will he do little things to hurt her in order to make her cry? Not the a-hole. Jake thinks it's funny to scare a baby and laughs when she cries. I would consider his behavior abuse, especially since he's been told numerous times to stop. Even after threatened with eviction, he still did it. It almost seems like a power trip to him, picking on a smaller person with the express intent of scaring them. It might be that he is jealous because he isn't getting all of the attention. Regardless, he needs help. And repeated trauma experience for a 3-month-old baby startling them to tears multiple times a day is traumatizing, begins to program their brain. This level of early development is so crucial. The accidents we do as parents and family are enough to break them. Repeatedly being yelled at and startled by a random monster her brain has no means to process is a surefire way to mess up her development, permanently. The fact that the dad doesn't know that nor defend the baby from it, and like others have said, likely why he's not with a second mother and baby in his role as a dad, is an unforgivable offense. Next story. Am I the a-hole for giving my children permission to defend themselves and ruining my brother's visit? My brother has 2 stepkids, 10 and 8, that are absolute brats. He is infatuated with their mother though, so he will not discipline them. It's fine, because we do not see them much. Over the holidays, he came over with his family and the kids were horrible. My daughter 11 and my son 10 wanted nothing to do with them, so I gave them permission to go to their rooms and lock the doors to keep the peace. My brother and his wife started complaining because my kids were being bad hosts. I said I wasn't going to make my children unhappy to appease his. Eventually, my kids did come out to try and play together again. His kids started pushing my son around. He told them to stop, but they wouldn't. My daughter told them to stop bugging her brother, but they wouldn't. They came to us and told us what was going on, and my brother called them tattletales and told them to just go play and deal with it themselves. I asked him if that's what he really wanted. He said yes, let kids be kids. So, I took him to my daughter's room and pointed out that she had multiple belts and trophies for martial arts. Then I showed him my son's room, same thing. Then I went back to the living room and told my kids, in front of him and his wife, that they had my permission to defend themselves. He immediately called his kids over and told them to behave. Their mom was not pleased. She said that her kids were just having fun. And I said that my kids' idea of fun was probably a little more violent than hers. Long story short, they behaved for about 10 minutes and then they decided to test my kids. One black eye and an arm bar later, his kids are sitting on a couch while my brother and his wife yell at me for raising brutes. For the record, each of his kids, although younger, are bigger than my daughter, and they had multiple warnings to play nice. So, currently there is a huge family fight because I let my kids beat up his innocent angels. Unfortunately for him, most of the people that have met his kids are asking what they did to provoke mine. My mom says that I should not have told my kids to defend themselves. I told her that she was welcome to host any and all gatherings that involved those brats. Last time they were there, they destroyed a stuffed animal that had the remains of her last dog. She doesn't like having them in her house either. Am I the a-hole? My mom says that I should not have told my kids to defend themselves. What kind of stupid nonsense is this? Instead of defending the kids who are being bullied and laying into your brother, she wants to further encourage the bad behavior? I wouldn't trust anyone around my kids who's defending the stepkids' behavior, and I'd make that known. Some people are so determined to keep the peace in the short term and avoid hard confrontations that they willfully blind themselves to problems that will cause long-term damage. Easier for mom to ignore the stepkid's bratty behavior and pressure other family members to do the same than have a hard discussion with her son about his and his wife's parenting, risking her relationship with said son in the process. I imagine that this isn't the first time OP's brother has thrown a fit to get his way. It has maybe threatened his mom with no contact if she didn't side with him in the past issues, while OP has historically been more measured. If that's the case, then mom is relying on OP being the reasonable party to appease brother, as she'd prefer to keep a strained relationship with both her children rather than risk losing one, even if that means taking the blatantly incorrect side in conflicts between them, knowing that OP probably isn't going to escalate the same way that brother would. Not a-hole. Always encourage your children to stand up to bullies, regardless of relation. Yep, this early lesson reaps lifelong benefits. Last story. Am I the a-hole for leaving my husband's kids out of my will? I, 52 female, married John, 58 male, 15 years ago. When we met, he had been widowed for about 3 years and had 2 children from his previous relationship, Mark, 24 male, and Lisa, 22 female. I never met his first wife, and as far as I know, they were a happy family until an accident took her away. And John was devastated for almost a year until he started coming out of his shell. When I came into the picture, he was still heavily involved with his former in-laws, and had 2 young children as a young father under his care, so he was taking all the help he could from them, and they were his emotional support. I had no problem with that, and made it known to him that I would never try to come between him and any relationship that he and his first wife had created. When things became serious and I was introduced to his kids, they made it known instantly to me that I would never replace their mother, and that they weren't particularly pleased with my presence in their home. I accepted that, and I, in agreement with John, decided that we would let our relationship advance slowly to let the kids adjust, and that I would never force myself as a stepmother or anything like that. And I didn't move in until they explicitly said it was okay, and we got married with their blessing. This process took years, and family and individual therapy because both me and John wanted to make sure that we were respecting his kids' boundaries. The result is that we cohabitated, but I never parented them. I went to their school functions, cleaned for them, cooked, and we talked and had a cordial relationship. But I never disciplined them, never put rules on them. They never came to me to ask permission for anything or tell me their secrets or ask me advice, which was fine by me. That was what they wanted. In this time, I had 2 children myself, Kate 13 female and Laura 11 female, and the girls do have a sibling relationship with John's children. They've moved out in this time, and although I assisted some with their college expenses and such, also when they were growing up, I am no longer financially involved with them. This holiday season, John was talking about his retirement plan. He works in a high-stress industry and has been saving up for early retirement and wanted to put his affairs in order to retire the next couple of years. He still assists his children with a bit of a monthly allowance, and he told them he would be cutting that to put that money towards his own savings. And they did not take it well. They looked at me and asked if I could continue their allowance since I own my business and it's doing really well. And I said no. I do well for myself, but I'm not rich. And when John retires, I'll be the only income in the household. Plus, I'll have to save for my daughter's college fund plus my own retirement. As the conversation of my finances followed, they tried to say that it was my responsibility to take care of them. And I was just taken aback by that statement because they explicitly told me many times, including recently not just as children, mind you, that I was just their father's wife, not their mother. So, I have absolutely no responsibility towards them in that regard. When she heard that, Lisa got angry and brought up the fact that she expected to inherit my business someday because she grew up with it. I told her in no uncertain terms that she and her brother were entitled to nothing of mine, and certainly not my business, which I built myself from the ground up since before I met their dad. They both got angry and left. My husband knew about all these arrangements well before all this, but is angry about how it all went down. It has been bombarded with messages about what a selfish witch I am since the argument, by his children and his former in-laws since New Year's, and even my daughters are mad at me now. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. They're not your kids, and you're not responsible for them. They themselves even made sure you knew this. They are rude and disrespectful, yet expect to be handed anything they want on a plate. You owe them nothing. If your business goes to anyone, it's your own daughters. Don't back down from this. They are not, never will be, and never have been your responsibility, which is what they wanted. But even my daughters feel like their siblings are part of this. I always felt like they as kids should put the boundaries and I shouldn't be the one overstepping. But now everyone is turning on me? I don't know if I really did something wrong. Your daughters had a different relationship with them than you, so it's understandable that they feel differently than you. They got to experience a sibling relationship with them while you were repeatedly told you're not family. You didn't do anything wrong. With how entitled his kids are acting now, I don't know if you should just give in anyways, but it's up to you and how you want to settle this argument. I just feel kinda bad, because I'm always reading in this forum about awful step-parent trying to force blended families and erase previous familial situations. And I always felt myself so superior by how I handled things and how I never let the memory of my husband's previous wife fade in my household, and the relationship of my daughters and their siblings. Now I feel like it's all going to the crapper. And maybe if I had done something different and tried to be more involved with John's children, we wouldn't be on this situation or something? I don't know. I am very confused and frustrated at this moment. Am I the a-hole for opening my husband's safe with a crowbar to get money for an emergency? I, female 31, am a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids. My husband dedicates most of his salary towards the kids and household, but has a safe that he puts money in on a monthly basis. I didn't make a fuss over it, because he said that he saved money for an emergency. I asked for the password countless of times, but he refused to give it to me and said that in case of an emergency, all I needed to do was inform him. He went on a 2-day business trip. Our son got sick and I had to take him to the hospital. The problem is, he needed medication but I didn't have any money except what was in the safe. I called my husband, but he didn't respond. I texted him explaining the situation, but he refused to cut his trip short and come home. I asked how I was supposed to get money for medication, and he suggested I either A, wait for him till he gets home, or B, borrow money from the neighbors. I just had it. I hung up and went to the garage to grab a crowbar, then took it to the safe and opened it. I took the money I needed, which was about $60, and went to the pharmacy store to get the medication. My husband came home a bit earlier, and when he saw what I'd done to the safe, he flipped out and started freaking out at me. I said I had no choice, and that all his suggestions were unreasonable and illogical for me to even consider. He yelled, saying I breached his trust and his boundaries, and should have never touched the safe, much less used the crowbar on it. We had a big argument, and he kept saying that I had no respect for him, his income, and instructions. Then he completely refused to speak to me and is threatening to move the safe since he no longer trusts me around it. Was I in the wrong for the steps I took? Should I have tried another alternative? Edit. I didn't have any credit cards because he's the one that normally has them since they're in his name, and I don't have a bank account to be able to own a credit card. Now for the top comments. This is financial abuse, and it's absolutely insane. Go to the neighbors and borrow money? Seriously? If my neighbor came to me and asked to borrow money because her husband left on a 2-day business trip and left her with no money, I'd call Adult Protective Services. I'd ask if she needed help getting to a women's shelter with her kids. It's 2022. Never mind the fact that as the working parent, he should have set up an account for you, the caregiver, with a few $100s for care expenses at all times. But like $60 for an extremely sick child? We live in an age of instant transfers, and there's a huge big box of money to home, and it says borrow it from the neighbors? That's the whole times infinity. You and your children are victims of mistreatment. You need to get out, my dear. So much this. Get out. Run. If only it were so easy. That's why people financially mistreat spouses so that they can't leave. Opie couldn't even get her hands on $60 for kids' medicine without taking drastic measures. How is she supposed to just leave the house? I would assume she's socially isolated, especially since she didn't have friends/family she could call for help either. And she might even be in a rural area, without access to services like a women's shelter. I'm not saying she shouldn't start planning and squirreling away what she can, but just saying run for the hills isn't exactly helpful in these scenarios. She should absolutely start hiding away money whenever she can, and make copies of all important documents as well. Frankly, her best bet would have been to clear out that safe entirely and run with it. But she definitely needs to start making a plan to become independent of her husband, because he's controlling and that is dangerous. Not stay whole. You do realize that the fact that he cares more about money and the supposed breach of trust than your son's health is highly concerning, right? This behavior is not normal. The fact that he left you with no money and you have access to no money is financial abuse. Let him move the safe, all the way out of the house along with his sorry butt. Nah, don't let him move the safe. She should take the rest of the money in it and deposit it into a bank account in her name, then kick him out. She'll need the money to live on until the divorce is finalized. Next story. Am I the a-hole for leaving my sick wife to deal with 2 toddlers on her own? I'd like to give a little bit of background first. I, male 36, and my wife, female 35, have a 3-year-old daughter. I have a long-standing issues with my wife's sister-in-law because I think that my wife constantly panders to her and caters to her every whim, often at the expense of me and my daughter. Recently, we had a huge fight about her saying something offensive to me in a public setting in defense of sister-in-law at our daughter's expense. And up until this point, she has tried to do better. Now, we've been both floored with flu for the past 10 days or so. Negative COVID tests. She seems to have it slightly worse than me. So I've been tagged in to do all chores, childcare, and cooking while she's tried to get as much rest as possible. This has now trickled into a week I booked off work on holiday, which doesn't bother me in itself because I'd rather make sure they were both okay. I am, however, starting to feel really run down myself now. I'm tired. I've had limited opportunity to rest and catch up on sleep, and I'm sore. Today my wife woke up at around 9:15 a.m. I'd been up since 6:30 with daughter and said she was feeling a bit better. I said that's great, and maybe she could hold the fort while I went for a nap. She said that what she was actually thinking was inviting sister-in-law's youngest around for a playdate to keep our daughter occupied. For reference, she's 3. This isn't an uncommon thing to happen. Sister-in-law often brings her kids to us. And for reasons I still don't understand, our daughter was never invited to spend an afternoon with them in their house. I said that I really wasn't feeling up to it today. My wife said that I wouldn't have to do anything to entertain them, to which I was skeptical about, but I agreed. So about 15 minutes after she arrives, I'm asked to get them drinks and snacks and then play games and occupy them. Now, I'm aware that I'd have needed to do this for my own daughter, but going from 1 to 2 toddlers is such a huge leap in terms of the demand on your time and energy. Add this to the fact that I was feeling lousy and it just wasn't a good mix. I'm off work this week, and on top of my illness, I didn't sign up for extra childcare duties. After about 2 hours, I told my wife that I was going up to my mom's house to get asleep. The whole way up, she was phoning and texting me, absolutely furious that I'd left her to deal with it. I'm literally lying in my mom's spare bed writing this now, but my brain is too wired to sleep. Am I the a-hole? I know it's horrible leaving her while she's sick to deal with 2 toddlers, but after so long holding the ball, I've reached my limit. Not the a-hole at all. You told her you needed rest, and she decided to have a guest over? You should have just gone to take a nap as soon as the other kid arrived. God, I wish I had done this, right as sister-in-law walked in. Why would she invite a toddler over when both of you are still sick? The toddler could pick up the flu at your house and bring it home with her. Exactly. And now, Opie, you are at your mom's house while ill? This whole thing is an absolute disaster. Have we forgotten the flu can also be dangerous? The whole thing is irrational. If children were going to be doing playdates, Opie's toddler should have gone to sister-in-law's. And then both Opie and the wife could rest. Not the a-hole. First of all, you are both sick. Why would your wife want to potentially give that to her niece? Secondly, when both parents are ill and in general is a team effort, you should have your fair share of rest. Otherwise, all that is gonna happen is one will get better whilst the other runs themselves down, physically and emotionally. Your wife invited her around, and your wife should look after her. Next story. Am I the a-hole for yelling at my wife after she woke me up to help with the kids? My wife, Sonia, is a stay-at-home mom to our 2 children, 7 male and 5 female. I really try to help with the kids when I get home. I know being a stay-at-home mom is pretty tiring, even though she has part-time off from school, but helping with homework, making food, and taking care of kids can be exhausting. So when I get home, I make dinner, wash the dishes, and stay with our children for a while so she can have her moment too. These weeks have been pretty exhausting. It is a very important month professionally because in November will be the delivery of a 6-month project that my team and I are idealizing. Last week was the final touches and review of the entire project. So I went to work at 8 a.m., got home at 5 p.m., took care of my kids until 9 p.m., and was actually working until 3 to 4 a.m. to maybe get 3 or 4 hours of sleep. I have trouble sleeping. So if I slept 12 hours in 5 days, it was a lot. I was exhausted. I wasn't even driving because I didn't trust my senses to drive. I couldn't vent to Sonia because she was stressed too as our children had a flu. I was dragged to the hospital by my coworkers after nearly passing out for only walking. The doctor demanded that I take a week's medical leave because I was already on the verge of a burnout. When I got home, I spoke to my wife and she seemed to be understanding. I asked her to give me a day off from everything as I would try to get as much sleep as possible that night to come back better. She said fine. I offered to also give her a day off because I know she was tired too. I went to sleep at 9 p.m. and woke up to Sonia nudging me to take the kids to school. I walked with them. I talked about what we talked about yesterday and she said, yeah, but that's your part of the morning and I have other morning plans. Yoga class, gym, and house cleaning. I asked her 3 times more to do this for me as I was still exhausted. 6:30 a.m. But she just said, you're still a father, tired or not. It could be tired or not, but I ended up losing my mind and screaming, I just need a few hours of sleep. Please respect what I asked of you yesterday and let me sleep. She was in shock and said, okay then. She took the kids and I slept until 4 p.m. There were several messages from her saying that I shouldn't have yelled at her for asking me to take responsibility as a parent and that it was toxic behavior of mine. Well, we haven't talked much more than necessary for 2 days. Am I the a-hole? Yes. I could take them, but as I said in the text, I have a lot of trouble sleeping. After getting up and taking them, it would take a good few hours to get back to sleep, even when exhausted. I answered in the comments and I'll put it as extra. 1. Our children stay from 7:15 a.m. until 1 p.m. at school. My wife picks them up from school and stays with them until 5 p.m. when I get home. 2. The things she does, gym and yoga, take up 2 hours a day. When she gets home, she cleans the house. Sweeps, waters the plants, washes clothes, makes lunch, absolutely everything in the house. I don't think the division of tasks is so unfair because I'm not 100% the one who takes care of the kids at night. While I make dinner and wash the dishes, she stays with them and we also have family moments. My kids are in the spirit seeing face. Series and movie 8,000 times. I don't think it's that unfair because it's chaotic sometimes. And I know that being responsible for our kids all day is exhausting, so I offer the same to her later. I couldn't put all this in a post due to limit words. Now for the comments. Given the context, not day hole. A doctor literally ordered you to rest, and your wife agreed to help you. If roles were reversed and you took time off work to step in for your wife, you would be the a-hole for waking her up. She didn't respect your valid medical need to rest. Your doctor even ordered a week of medical leave to rest. If this isn't a recurring thing outside of this isolated incident, not the a-hole. I agree. Well, I'm just assuming here, Opie's wife didn't need to go to the gym or yoga if it was just for fun, and could have walked the kids to school since Opie's doctor literally ordered him to rest. It would have been a different story if the doctor had it otherwise. This right here. Also, it appears that the wife gets a 2-hour break every day for yoga/gym. When does Opie get his 2-hour per day break? Not the a-hole. As a rule, I tend to go with you're the a-hole or everyone sucks here when it comes to yelling at people. But while I'm still not a fan even in this situation, it came after trying to be reasonable 3 times. I also usually see the men on here with stay-at-home wives as a-holes because they think their wives should wait on them hand and foot. That's clearly not the case here. It sounds like she has unfair expectations of you. You were literally sick, and she wanted to do yoga. You may apologize to her for yelling, but you standing your ground was not toxic. A good loving wife wouldn't be trying to argue fairness when you're sick from exhaustion. She needs a wake-up call about her entitlement. So let me get this straight. You take the kids to school. They're in school until what? 3? She watches them for 2 hours, then you take over? And otherwise, she does the cooking and housework. Yeah, cooking and housework is a lot, but come on. That's not really a fair division of labor. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my husband drive my son to school with his step-siblings anymore? Context. My ex-husband and I have custody of our 11-year-old son. He's diabetic, and since his diagnosis is relatively new, we're still working on managing things for him so he could continue to live a normal life just like other kids. His stepdad is responsible for dropping him off/picking him up from school, since his step-siblings attend the same school. The issue began when my son started asking me or his bio-dad to take him to school instead of his stepdad. He said a reason for that is because his step-siblings open his lunchbox and take all the additional snacks that he needs in case he had a hypoglycemic episode. That's what we call low blood sugar. His step-siblings would take his lunchbox from him and take the snacks, and only leave him his sandwich and water. His stepdad thinks there's nothing wrong with sharing, although I explained to him about a millionth times how important his snacks are. He promised that he won't let his kids touch my son's lunchbox from now on, and I believed him. Then days ago, my son came home and told me his step-siblings took his snacks from his lunchbox again. I was enraged. I asked if his stepdad saw them. He said yes, and he scolded him when he refused to let them have the snacks. I lost it. I blew up at my husband and told him that my son won't be riding in his car again with his step-siblings after what they've done. And after he allowed it, I told him that my son's father will be driving him to and from school from now on. He lashed out at me saying that I was driving a wedge between the kids and teaching my son to grow up being selfish and self-centered and antisocial, and also making my son distant from him and getting him to favor his bio-dad. I refused to discuss it, and now he's acting all hurt and disrespected, saying it was not worth ruining the kids' relationship over some snacks. Edited? His argument is that I don't get his kids the same amount of snacks I get for my son. They go through their snacks in no time. In my defense, I said that the snacks are part of my son's diabetes management routine, and he, unlike his step-siblings, needs them anytime. And so I don't feel like I'm obligated or that I should buy step-siblings the same amount of snacks, seeing that they can do without them for a while. Am I making sense here? My stepchildren's ages are 13 and 10. Unless your husband has some kind of rare cognitive impairment, that means he doesn't understand the meaning of medical condition. He's the one who's the a-hole here, not you. As a longtime Reddit fan, my first instinct is, of course, to suggest dumping him, but I'm trying to curb that instinct. Aw, come on, you know you want to. Maybe just this once. You know, for old time's sake? Just joking with you. But yeah, I agree, the husband is either a bully or an idiot that doesn't understand how dangerous this medical condition can be. Even if he doesn't understand the severity of the medical issues, he does understand that his sons are stealing the majority of his stepson's lunch. If he thought it was unfair his stepson got so many more snacks, he could easily pack snacks for his sons. He is definitely a bully rather than an idiot. Not the a-hole, but maybe it's time to have a conversation with your husband about possibly modifying the custody arrangement for your son, because he is neglecting the boy's very real medical needs in a way that can have very dire health consequences. Also, taking all of something is not sharing. Modify the custody arrangements? How about modifying the marriage arrangements?